Vietnam Business Forum aims to resolve obstacles for enterprises. And changing global trade context, opportunity or challenge for Vietnam. Hello there and welcome to another edition of BizLine here on VTV International. I'm your host Hoàng Hằng, and let's now take a look at some economic highlights over the past week. Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc on December the 4th attended the Vietnam Business Forum 2018 in Hanoi, themed Sharing Opportunities in the World of Changing Trade. He affirmed that Vietnam has no ambitions to be the best in globalization, but it wants to be friends with the best players and desires to become a prosperous country. In the world of changing trade, Prime Minister Phúc suggested entrepreneurs consider this as a natural shift of currents. Each country can fully utilize these commercial currents to assist their boats toward their destination. Prime Minister Phúc affirmed that the government is making steps to improve the business environment. He asked ministries, sectors and localities to put concerns of enterprises into their agendas and prioritize addressing those concerns in their management. The Prime Minister also affirmed that the government will support all business in their development, as well as to create an open, fair and low-cost business environment, which will help them in export and import to reform management and strengthen inspection and administrative procedures. Vietnam has actively promoted the international economic integration process, which will lay the foundation for a wider and more comprehensive integration. Deputy Prime Minister Vương Đình Huệ stated that the Vietnam International Economic Integration Forum in Hanoi on Tuesday. The Deputy Prime Minister said that with the developments in the global economy, the Vietnamese government needs to make analysis, forecasts and policies that reduce the negative impacts of the global trend of protectionism in order to come up with proper solutions. At the forum, speakers focused on analyzing and forecasting future trends of the world's economy, with a particular focus on trade protectionism and trade relations among the major economies. As demand for capital increases in the last month of the year, banks need to raise their capital mobilization, resulting in an adjustment in deposit rates. Interest rates of state-owned commercial banks like Vietcombank and Vietinbank are mainly adjusted for short terms to stand at 4.5% per annum for a 1-month term, 5% per annum for a 3-month term, and 5.5% per annum for a 6-month term. After the adjustment, these are still banks with the lowest market deposit rates, lower than the market average from 0.5 to 1%. Interest rates of 12, 18 and 36-month terms have been pushed up by more than 8% by NCB and Bắc Á Bank. VIB leads the market with interest rates up to 8.4% per annum. Banks also reward higher rates on large deposits or offer gifts to attract more deposits. According to Nikkei, Vietnam's Purchasing Managers Index or PMI hit one of its highest levels in history in November, soaring to 56.5 points from 53.9 points in October. Vietnam's PMI topped the ASEAN and left several regional countries far behind. The soaring PMI in November reflects that production and confidence of enterprises in Vietnam are quite positive, laying a firm foundation for the country's growth in 2019. The value of mobile payments and electronic wallets grew at a 3-digit rate in the first 3 quarters of 2018. A number of users and value of e-transactions through channels such as the internet and e-wallet saw strong growth in many banks. According to the State Bank of Vietnam's payment department, e-transactions have increased 18.3%. Mobile payment and e-wallet payment increased by 126% and 161% respectively. The number of transactions through the internet, mobiles and e-wallets are also up 33%, 30% and 28% respectively. According to the representative of the Ho Chi Minh City State Bank branch, credit institutions should promote card payments, internet banking and mobile banking for public service payment. In a bid to improve Vietnam's black pepper sector after 3 years of prices bottoming out, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, the Vietnam Pepper Association and the International Pepper Community held a conference in Ho Chi Minh City on Tuesday. Black pepper is one of Vietnam's specialties, but its price has plunged from $8.62 to $2.15 per kilogram in the last 3 years. As 97% of Vietnam's black pepper is exported, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development stressed the importance of planning production based on the world market and developing toward clean production. In the last 5 years, Vietnam's black pepper plantation have grown 3 times. In the global context of huge supply, foreign firms suggested Vietnam should not only focus on producing black pepper for food, but also use this agro product in other sectors such as cosmetics and perfume. Those are highlights in the economic scene. Up next in our crosstalk, we will delve into how changing global trade context impacts Vietnam in the years to come. The global trade context has been changing with the rise of protectionism and intense trade disputes. Meanwhile, several countries still support a world of free trade, with a number of free trade agreements waiting to be ratified or take effect. Although the trade war between China and the US has signaled to de-escalate, it is said to still affect the global trade. So how positively and negatively will this affect Vietnam as a country depending much on exports? And how can Vietnam deal with those impacts to reap benefits from the global trade? We will find out in this week's episode of BizLine. But first, let's take an overview of the current global and Vietnam's trade situation in the following clip.
The trade war between China and the US officially began when the US started to collect a 25% tariff on 818 imported Chinese products, valued at $34 billion on July the 6th. The tensions escalated over the following months. By the end of November, the US had slapped tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese products. Meanwhile, for its part, China has set tariffs on $110 billion worth of U.S. goods. On the sidelines of the G20 summit, the two countries' presidents agreed upon a trade truce. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, the two presidents instructed their economic teams to step up negotiations toward the removal of all additional tariffs. The U.S. also aims to set tariffs on several countries, such as Canada, Argentina, and South Korea. Meanwhile, many countries still favor a world with open trade to boost the flow of goods across nations, with a number of outstanding free trade agreements in the list. The EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement is waiting to be approved in early 2019 by the EU Parliament. As such, 99% of tariffs will be removed for the two sides. The Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership will also be ratified in the beginning of next year.
In order to further discuss the topic, our reporter Thanh Hai sat down with Mr. Tommaso Andretta, Vice Chairman of Eurocharm in Vietnam and Co-Chair of the Vietnam Business Forum. Let's take a listen.
Thank you so much for joining us. The global trade situation is changing in the way that protectionism is rising while many countries still support free trade. So as a country relying much on exports, how will this affect Vietnam?
Well, because Vietnam relies on trade more than any other country in the world, its export and imports each are higher than GDP, it is clear that anything that affects the flow of trade out of Vietnam or into Vietnam will have a disproportionately strong effect on Vietnam. Which means Vietnam is the only country in the world that cannot afford trade wars, cannot afford to be making protectionist measures because it will be hurt more than the opponent. Vietnam specializes nowadays in some products which are essential. The electronics that are exported out of Vietnam are an important industry and at the moment is untouched by the trade wars. The trade wars for the moment are being waged on heavier commodities, on steel, on aluminium, and these kind of things that are also affecting Vietnam already. At the moment, it looks like Vietnam is having advantage from protectionism in other countries because position as a country that is not considered to be a threat because it has some free trade agreements. It has a very good network of free trade agreements, actually.
With the trade war between the US and China, some say that Vietnam will become more attractive to investors because investors will pour their money into Vietnam instead of China. So what is your thought on this?
To some extent, this has already been happening for a while. Depending on the nature of the production plants that one is looking at, clearly Vietnam has advantages over China in terms of cost of labor, in terms of taxes, and it has advantages in general in the terms of being a friendlier place. So for not very high value-added type of products, especially if they are to be exported outside of China, Vietnam is a very good place. If instead you want to export to the rest of the world, Vietnam is better placed to be in the system. It's essential that Vietnam works at developing the value chain upstream so that more value added can be put in. In some terms, it means making products more unique, like in agriculture.
Experts say the trade war between China and the US will shift investment flows. Specifically, instead of China, foreign investors will choose other markets with competitive labor costs to avoid the impacts of the trade war.
Cái sản xuất của Trung Quốc bị xáo trộn và thị trường xuất khẩu của các cái doanh nghiệp FDI ở Trung Quốc bị xáo trộn thì có thể đấy là một cái cơ hội rất tốt để cho Việt Nam có thể tận dụng được, thu hút được cái luồng FDI mà hiện nay đang ở Trung Quốc.
Ongoing US-China trade tensions have highlighted the risk of concentrated production bases in a single country and a triggering supply chain reorganization. We see companies shifting some production out of China and Vietnam is gaining some of that business.
According to a survey involving more than 430 American firms in China, about one-third intended to move their production to other countries to avoid the trade tension. However, experts also raised the question of how to utilize this investment flow.
Dòng đầu tư nước ngoài mà nó tràn vào Việt Nam mà nếu mà chúng ta không biết lựa chọn, nếu chúng ta không có đủ năng lực để mà ngăn cản những cái đầu tư mà chúng ta không mong muốn thì như thế là nó thành tiêu cực. Nhưng ngược lại nó lại cũng là cái đấy nhưng mà nhìn ở góc khác nó lại là tích cực. Ví dụ như là đầu tư là chúng ta có quyền lựa chọn, cái cơ hội lựa chọn nó tăng lên.
Meanwhile, experts forecast that there will be a large volume of Chinese goods entering Vietnam. This could make Vietnam's long-lasting trade deficit to China even worse. On the other hand, it also raises the risk for exported Vietnamese products to face anti-circumvention tariffs imposed on a third country to track down Chinese overseas investments to avoid US sanctions.
Với một lượng cung rất lớn, khi mà không thâm nhập được vào thị trường Mỹ thì sẽ thâm nhập vào thị trường nước khác và chắc chắn là khó có thị trường nào thuận lợi như Việt Nam với một cái quốc gia láng giềng có rất nhiều cái cửa khẩu thì rõ ràng là cái nguy cơ mà những hàng Trung Quốc sang Việt Nam cũng là một cái áp lực cạnh tranh rất là lớn.
Chúng ta cũng biết rằng là Trung Quốc hiện nay đang là cái đối tượng, là cái khu vực mà chịu nhiều các cái biện pháp phòng vệ thương mại. Khá là tự nhiên thôi, đấy là họ sẽ tìm cách để lẩn tránh thông qua các thị trường khác.
So as you said previously that like some industries of Vietnam is being affected by the trade war. So what industries do you think are heavily or the most affected by the trade war between China and US, and as well as global, trade tension between major economies?
At the moment, the only visible tension is there In Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, but unfortunately growingly, even in my country, Italy, there is a public opinion that is favorable to reducing free trade. And that is going to very negatively affect the economy of these countries. Each country that protects itself is going to see its economy shrink instead of grow and become less varied, less strong, less resilient against other problems. Real competition is the only thing that works at making things happen. Protection, even temporary, does not really resolve the problem because it takes away the fire in the trousers, the thing that makes people run fast to look for some water to switch the fire off. And these countries are going to be paying a high price. The things that are working for Vietnam are, of course, textile and furniture. They are traditional industries in which Vietnam has always been strong, and it will become stronger with the inflow of investment from China. Where is Vietnam paying the price? In industries that actually have been a little bit artificially grown, like steel. Steel in Vietnam is a subsidized industry. Steel is having problems, and the strong companies of Vietnam are okay. They will find other markets. They will survive very easily the protection unless it gets even worse than now. But some of the weaker companies may have serious problems of cash flow because as they are selling to America, they may stop selling to America, and unless they find some other buyers, they will be sitting on a lot of product.
Vietnam's steel industry has continuously faced a number of trade remedy cases from other countries. According to the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, 37 out of 78 anti-dumping cases in Vietnam in the past 2 years were related to iron and steel. Experts say that this is inevitable as Vietnam has integrated further into global trade. In addition, the U.S. has recently initiated anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigations on Vietnam steel products for suspension of anti-dumping duty avoidance. In order to cope with trade remedy, experts say that enterprises need to have some initial measures.
Tôi cho rằng là doanh nghiệp phải nắm rõ xem là có những quy định đó hay không đối với cái lĩnh vực của mình, đối với ngành nghề của mình. Phải tăng cường hiểu biết hơn về luật pháp quốc tế, nhất là trong thương mại quốc tế, và thậm chí là cần phải có đội ngũ luật sư để có thể là giúp doanh nghiệp xử lý các vụ kiện tụng trong cái thời gian tới.
Additionally, according to experts, diversifying markets for exports and especially imports of input materials is an important way not only for steel but also other industry to avoid trade remedy.
Khu vực kinh tế ASEAN thì nơi đó là một khu vực kinh tế cực kỳ rộng mở, tiềm năng và có chuẩn mực tốt, và nó cũng tương đồng với cả cái nền kinh tế của Việt Nam, với các nhu cầu kinh tế của Việt Nam. Không nên chỉ có một hướng như vậy, không nên chỉ có một chiều và chiếm một tỷ trọng quá lớn vào một đối tác. Và đây chính là một cái cơ hội để cho các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam hướng lại với AEC.
The most important solution for enterprises, according to experts, is to enhance their own competitiveness in terms of product quality through utilizing technological advancements and improving human resources. This is aimed at not only preventing trade remedies, but also enjoying the most benefits of free trade agreements.
Technological advancements now is going very fast. So in your opinion, how can market players adapt to change in job structure, especially to benefit from free trade agreements?
Let's start with the last part of the question, which is easiest. To take advantage of free trade agreements, well, free trade works best when people have something specialized that they have to exchange with someone else. If everyone makes the same product, there is a bit less advantage. If someone finds something a little bit special that is exported from this country into others, and then he buys what it's missing, then this is the ideal solution for having the most advantage from trade. Creating companies that are green will work as well as it is working for many industries in Italy, Germany, Denmark, Holland, the United States, northern European countries, that are selling in their own country and in other countries, let's call them sustainable products. Developing renewable energy in Vietnam is possible. There is a lot of natural sources available. You were asking about skills. The first skill that Vietnam has to acquire is to start teaching in schools not only good mathematics, but languages that work. On top of that, the ability to think problematic way. Vietnamese are very good it's shown in international comparisons. At least the best schools are amongst the good ones in the world for learning a lot of knowledge. But the knowledge may not be up to date and may not be giving the flexibility to people. If they have to be repeating the things exactly in one way only, it doesn't help being in a company and resolving problems.
What about enterprises? What kind of area of human resource training should they focus on?
To every company. They have a very clear idea about what they want to do tomorrow. In order to master bigger resources, you have to be able to tell a story. And the story means thinking longer term. And it means thinking holistically, not just in one direction, but resolving the whole problem. I'm a banker, and if people come and ask me money, they have to tell me a pretty good story. They have to be credible, they have to be professional, and they have to tell me some reason why their project is going to work. And on doing this, Vietnamese are particularly weak overall. Then, of course, there are technical skills. We need more engineers, not only PhD engineers. Those are very welcome. The government is doing a very hard job at making the ones that went to study abroad come back, the ones who went to work abroad come back, and this is a very good thing. But on top of those, on top of improving and opening more the education market to foreign universities at high level, we need a lot of medium-level skilled people who are called engineers but come out of a technical school. People who know how to touch a machine, who know how to repair it.
The World Bank recently released the first ever Human Capital Index. According to the report, Vietnam is ranked 48 out of 157 countries. A representative of the World Bank said that this is a good achievement, but more needs to be done.
The digital era going forward is absolutely critical, and Vietnam must continue to invest in human capital. And that investment has really to look at issues related to how to modernize the higher education, how to modernize the vocational and training institution of Vietnam.
At a recent Vietnam Business Forum held in Hanoi, a number of foreign groups suggested measures to improve human resource quality in Vietnam.
Companies should be able to hire different level of technician or specialists to meet their business needs. To do so, the national structure must be further subdivided according to the sector and level.
In addition, they also recommended attracting more foreign investments into education systems in order to be better prepared for the new needs of the market.
The Vietnam Business Forum this year focused on the opportunities of the world of changing trade. So how can Vietnam learn from shared experience of foreign experts, in your opinion?
The rest of the world has started growing earlier than Vietnam. So the same way as you learn from your teachers, it's a good idea because the teachers know better because they've been studying before. They were born before, they studied before. They experienced many things. So it's a good idea for Vietnamese to think with their own head, but also to consider the example of other countries in the positive and in the negative. Sometimes, for example, ASEAN, which is a very good thing, is used as an excuse to share the worst practice, especially in human resources, sharing, transfer. The worst practice of all countries is the one adopted by the others. That doesn't work. The world has a lot of money, more than Vietnam has. So if Vietnam finds a way to tap into that enormous reservoir of resources, then it will be able to have better infrastructure, the infrastructure that we need to produce, to move our goods, to move our people, and to export better. We need infrastructure to be able to export and import, of course.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being at your program.
The changing global trade context, whether it's protectionism or free trade, has influenced Vietnam both positively and negatively. In order to overcome challenges and utilize opportunities that it has brought, experts suggest Vietnam improving its own competitiveness. Specifically, enterprises are advised to create more added values for their products, enhance human resource quality, as well as to be prepared for the trade remedies. And that also wraps up this edition of BizLine. In the meantime, you can log on to vtv4.vn, our YouTube channel at vtv4go for more news and updates. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.